Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. جزاكم الله خيرا for coming to our second session of al-Maqasid or al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyya. We said we are going to be going over 5. Last week we were together, we introduced the topic. Today, bi'idhnillah, we are going to tackle the first one. And we said the first one in order is, the first one is al-umur bimaqasidiha, that actions or matters are based or judged on their intentions. Maqasid comes from the word qasd, which means like to want to do something. So we could also even say, even though the scholars make a distinction, we could say that intentions are by, or actions are by their intentions. Right? Because when you go to the proof for al-umur bimaqasidiha, the first proof that they are going to bring is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. That every action that you and I perform, they are judged according to the intentions that are made. And everyone is going to get what they intended to do. So this is the proof that they have. But they are not going to say that matters are based on your intentions, even though this is what the meaning is. Because an-niyya, in the Arabic language, it means a determination to do something. Like you are going to do something, then you have made the intention. You have not made a qasd, you did not want to just do it. Now you've made that determination, the azm that is required to go from qasd to niyya, which is I am now actually going to do this. And here, inshallah, we're going to break down the hadith for us just to understand. And the letter that we are going to focus on is the letter ba that comes bin niyyat. This ba, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he says it means this is a ba of companion. So meaning it is right next to it. That every deed is going to be judged based on the intentions, and that intention needs to be made at the beginning of the action, because this musahaba that they have together has to be with one another. Others, they say that it is a ba of shartiyya, that intentions or actions are not going to be accepted except with the condition or the status of the niyyah that was made for it. The niyyah that was made for it. We are going over a work on, or a class on qawa'id. So this is a qawa'id that has been written by the scholars of fiqh. They do not care about intentions. It breaks into 2 points. If we were to take this as a class, for example, of tazkiyah or suluk, we would worry about intentions from the basis of who are you doing an action for? Is it for the sake of Allah, or is it for something else? But because this is fiqh, we are not looking for who you are doing it for, but what are you intending to do? What is the intentions that you are making to do something? And really, to both of ways of looking at niyyah, there's benefits into it. And when we look at niyyah in terms of who am I doing it for, this is how a person is able to get to the point where they have ikhlas in their hearts when they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that every action that I am doing, I'm only doing it for His sake. So you need that for ikhlas. That is different than what is intended here, al-umur bimaqasidiha. What is intended here, it is the niyyah of the fuqaha, and that does really 3 things. The niyyah of the fuqaha is 3 things. 1, it is tamyizul ibadat عن العادات, that to differentiate between customs and worship. So to differentiate between customs and worship, meaning, for example, we take a shower. I can take a shower for many, many reasons. I can wake up in the morning, and it is my custom that every morning before I go to work, before I go to school, that I have to shower. So there are people like that. Or I can wake up one morning and maybe the night was hot and I was sweating during the night, now I want to take a shower. Or someone could be in the state of janaba and it is wajib for him to perform ghusl, to perform a ritual bath. The only thing that makes these two different from one that you have to wash yourself to the custom of washing yourself, taking a shower before you go to work, it is the intentions that you make at the beginning. At the beginning. So it serves this purpose. Or, even let's say, for example, today, since the morning, I decided not to eat. So I'm not eating anything. But the reason I am doing it is because I want to feel a little bit better by staying away from food. This would be different than someone that is staying away from food for fasting. So the niyyah of the fuqaha, the first thing that it does, it makes a distinction between what is a practice versus what is a ritual act, an ibadah. The next one, it is tamyizul ibadat ba'duha an ba'd, like salah for example. It is the distinction that you make with your intentions when you look at two forms of, like a type of worship, but you could have two different intentions, and you are required to have two different intentions. For example, if I wake up and I pray 2 rak'ahs, I make my intentions, I complete 2 rak'ahs of prayer. How do I know this is the 2 rak'ahs of fajr, of fard salah, or this is the 2 rak'ahs of sunnah that come before it? The only way that's going to happen is going to be from my intentions, what I intended to do when I was doing this act. Or for example, I decided I have some money, I have to go and give to the poor. And I calculated my wealth and decided that I'm going to give 2.5% away. This, at this point, would be sadaqah. What makes it go from sadaqah to zakat? It is the intentions that a person is going to make. What makes my fasting one that I am doing as making it up for Ramadan? So I missed a day in Ramadan, now I want to make it up, versus one that I just wanted to fast. A person can't fast the entire year with no intentions of making up Ramadan, and then at the end later come and say, oh, those fasts that I did were for making up of the Ramadan fast. The intentions are what determine the acts that you do. The other one, and it is that from even the ibadat that you are distinguishing, the other thing that our intention is going to do to the act, now this is where we kind of divide in half between the people of suluk versus the fuqaha. And we say there are some acts of ibadah that you and I have to do in which we have to have intentions. And that intentions here is tied to maybe not what we are doing, but who we are doing it for. For example, we know that drinking alcohol is haram. Right now, are we getting rewarded for not drinking alcohol? Right now, we're not getting rewarded because we haven't made that intention that we're leaving alcohol. Even if we were to make the intentions now that you and I are not going to drink alcohol in this gathering, there was no possibility of that happening. Because of that, this is an intention that more focuses on who you're doing it for, or who you're trying to stay away from it from, rather than this is what it does. But if we just stick to the two, this would be enough for us. So, an-niyyah, the maqasid, the way that it does it divides actions from regular acts that we do to acts of ibadah. And then in ibadah itself, it distinguishes one from the other. Any questions up to here?
What is it that you mean by the intention of the fuqaha?
So what I mean here is, if we wanted to work, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ, right? Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, we have not commanded basic mankind except that they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with ikhlas. This ikhlas here, what determines your ikhlas is niyyah. And that is the niyyah of the people of like tazkiyah and suluk, of working on our hearts. Where that niyyah, what it does is, who are you doing this act for? Who are you doing this act for? That's what it focuses on. When it comes to the fuqaha, it is more of what are you doing? So the fuqaha or the faqih will look at, for example, we have to pray salah 5 times a day. He is not going to look at, did you pray those 5 times prayer for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What he is going to look at is, did you pray those 5 prayers? And when you prayed dhuhr, was your intentions, this is the 4 rak'ahs of dhuhr, or was it not? While the other side looks at that dhuhr, that intention, who was it for? Who did you pray dhuhr for? So that is the difference between the two definitions that are given by the fuqaha versus the scholars of tazkiyah and suluk and so on. Is that clear?
Yeah. And you said there was 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
Did you only cover 2 subjects?
So I covered 2 and then 1/2, which is also who are you doing it for. Later as we go through niyyah, the third will kind of clarify itself, inshallah. But just the 2 is for now, let's focus on the 2. So it differentiates between worship and regular acts that are similar to worship, like performing ghusl, or like things that, for example, you don't eat until 12, or someone doesn't eat from sunrise to sunset. This could be for the purpose of, I'm doing I don't want to eat, versus I'm doing this because I'm fasting. And then the other is in ibadat itself, there needs to be a distinction, for example, between sunnah and the fara'id. So what makes it different, especially for something like fajr, which there is no difference between the sunnah and the salah itself. The only difference, because it's both 2 rak'ahs, and you generally pray the 2 rak'ahs the same, the only thing that is going to change it is the intentions that you make. What makes sadaqah different from zakat? If you were to give the same amount of money, it is the intentions that you make. So this distinction that is there.
I believe one of the hadiths of Imam Nawawi, where the Prophet says, if you wanted to do something good but you didn't do it, you get 1 good deed for it. If you actually do it, you get 700 in multiples. And then if there's a bad thing that you wanted to do but you don't do it, then you get a good deed for it. But if you do it, and then you only get one bad deed. And is that also tied with the intentions and the aspects?
So here is whoever desires. So instead of whoever intends, the hadith is whoever desires to do good, Allah will give him a good reward. Right? Even if he doesn't do the act. But if he desired, then he goes and he does the act. Like let's say tomorrow I want to fast. There's an actual desire for me to want to fast tomorrow. So I'm not just saying this. I'm actually going to fast tomorrow. But something happens and I don't fast tomorrow. For that good intentions that I made or good desire that I had, Allah is going to reward me 1 good deed. If I actually carry it out and fast tomorrow, then the deed is going to be far greater. While here, we would take the intent, it wouldn't be close to intention, but we would translate it as like to intend to do something. But it's more of a desire to do or want to do good. That makes sense? So not intentions as and actually let's talk about intentions now. Intention, the scholars have made it a condition. They have made it a shart and also a wajib. And shart, the shurut, you have 2 types of them. You have one that is shurut al-sihha and shurut al-wujub. And conditions in the Arabic language, a shart, if you were to go look it up, the definition that would be given, it is ما يلزم العدم العدم ولا يلزم الوجود الوجود, where basically means if the condition is not there, then what required the condition to be there is also not there. But also, if it is there, it doesn't necessarily mean the thing that you intended to do is there. A good example of this is if you pray dhuhr with no intentions. You just came and you started going through the 4 rak'ahs. Have you prayed dhuhr? You have not prayed dhuhr. طيب? You have not prayed dhuhr because the intention was not there. So if the intention is there, it also negates what needed to be intended for you to do. But if someone makes the niyyah to pray dhuhr and actually doesn't pray it, the intention is there, that doesn't necessarily mean that the actual action is there. Is that clear? Are we clear on this point? طيب? Now, for salah, if you don't make intentions, none of the salah will be accepted. Meaning you will still owe a salah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded the people to go and perform Hajj if they are able to do so. What if somebody decided, I'm unable to perform Hajj? We'll say he doesn't have enough money. Or we'll say he doesn't have the strength to actually perform Hajj. This person regularly is excused from performing Hajj, right? You don't have the strength, you don't have the wealth. Hajj is not wajib upon you. But you decided to go and perform Hajj with all of these conditions not being met, a shart of it not being met. Is the Hajj of that person accepted or not? The Hajj is accepted.
If like they can't physically do it, but they still go and do it.
Yes.
And they're able to do it successfully.
Yes. With hardship, they don't have money, but they end up just going, even though they don't have, for example, the means to go. They somehow end up in Hajj, and they perform Hajj.
The reward is there, but
It's like, wouldn't it be the same thing as like the rukhsah when you're traveling and you could pray, you can show in the prayer, but you could still pray it normally and you could still get the same measure for it? Isn't it the same understanding that if, let's say you don't have the means, but you find the way to get the means and you go and you perform it, wouldn't it still be accepted in both ways?
You're almost there. So the difference between Hajj and Salah, this is a condition here of man istata'a ilayhi sabila. It is a condition to make Hajj wajib upon you. But it is not a condition for Hajj to be accepted. It is not from shurut al-sihha that you have to be able to go and perform Hajj. In Salah, it is a shurut of sihha for you to have intentions before you pray. But if we know in Tahara, if you don't have wudu, you cannot pray Salah. Because this is a shurut of sihha. Right? But another shurut, for example, of wujub, is a person has to stand and pray Salah. If they are unable to stand, can they pray in any other way? Yes, right? What if they are from that group but they decide to stand? Even though they're excused. Their salah is still accepted. Because standing, it is from the conditions of, not acceptance, but from the conditions of wujub. So in that sense, conditions break down into these two different parts. And from there you are able to say, if I don't have it for these actions, then that action is not going to be accepted. Right? In salah, if you don't have it, it's not going to be accepted. If you pay zakat, you paid the money, but you did not make intentions for zakat, you still owe zakat after that.
So if you were to give zakat, but let's say you don't have, because there's like a threshold, once you pass it, you have to give zakat. If you don't meet that threshold, but you still do the 2.5% and you still intended to be zakat, does that also mean that it won't be as considered as zakat, but as salah?
So if you don't meet the conditions, it will just be salah.
Even though you intended it to be.
Even if you intended to be zakat, because the condition for the acceptance or the correctness of zakat is that you meet these conditions.
So for zakat, it's pretty objective, meaning like there's a threshold and it's clear. But for example, for Hajj, like I feel like anyone can just make an excuse once they hit 60, for example, like I'm too old now and I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like how do you distinguish and how do you know like, yes, actually I can't do it and I shouldn't do it?
So
it'll be difficult, but I can still perform it.
So let's not look at body, but let's look at wealth. for Hajj.
It's easier to distinguish them. Okay.
Right. Because like in reality, I went to Hajj 2019. This year, my sister-in-law and her husband went to Hajj, and some of the brothers also went to Hajj from the community. And it's always the same case where there's way more older people above the age of 60 than they are like under the age of 60. It doesn't matter when you go to Hajj, right? Like majority of the people that are going, they're going later in life, and this is due to like really a few reasons. One of them being that as we get older, we want all of our sins to be forgiven. When I decided to go to Hajj 2019, one of the things like family members told me was, "Why are you going? You're so young. You haven't lived life enough to go and perform Hajj." Right? Because what's happening is you're erasing all of your sins, but you haven't reached 60, 70 to where, okay, now I'm actually thinking about going to the next life. And if that's the case, then now I have to go wipe my sins, right? So really, I think Hajj, there was a lot of people that were old that they were not able to perform Hajj. Especially the 3 days of Mina, there were people that we had to go and do the stoning on their behalf because they could not leave the tents. And because this is like how it is and how we've convinced ourselves as Muslims, this is how we perform Hajj, let's just remove the age away. But let's say you don't have money, or you have enough money to survive, but somebody comes to you and says, "You know what? I am going to pay for you to go to Hajj." This is not your own, you could say, "No, I don't want to go," and you're not going to be responsible because this is still out of your means. But if somebody says, "Yes, let me go with you," their financial issues are still going to be here, the fact that they don't have money to go by themselves. But if they go and perform Hajj, it's going to be accepted from them.
Okay, so if it's sponsored or whatnot.
Yeah.
So what if you go to Hajj and because let's say you're old and it's very difficult, and then somehow you pass away because of the difficulty?
Yes. No. You're lucky.
But is it luck, or is it because the idea is that you're putting your, as we just mentioned, you shouldn't perform Hajj if it's very difficult on your body. And so now you've taken that risk and you've gone even though you shouldn't have, and you've passed away.
So the question is, you put yourself in harm's way. That's the question.
Exactly.
So what I would say, one, we don't see the harm in I'm going to Hajj, therefore it's going to result in me dying. Where we would use that idea for things that we know are very dangerous. But no one goes I'm going to go on this trip, and then there's always the possibility, whether young or old, you could pass away. We could pass away tonight in our homes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us long lives. But when you go to Hajj, there is not a risk in you passing away there to where it's sufficient enough to where going actually puts you in danger. You get what I'm saying? Is that clear for everybody? There's yes, a lot of people die in Hajj every time they go. A lot of young people also die in Hajj when they go. But when you go, for example, we know that drinking alcohol, besides if there was no verse telling us that it's haram to drink it, we could say that it is haram because you're destroying yourself. And this is everyone that drinks alcohol, they are destroying themselves. Not in terms of spiritually, that's what we know, but even in terms of their health, they are destroying themselves, right? And because it's clear that drinking this leads to this, or taking these type of drugs leads to these, you could say here you're destroying yourself by doing these actions. But when it comes to Hajj, we can't find that those two things coming together. There's this many people actually go and die. And it's such a number to where we have to tell people you can't go to Hajj. They're where? Any other questions? There and then here.
Just back to the intention itself. Is there any conditions for it? Is it in the heart, or do you need to utter it to yourself? And can you change your intention
while in the act?
While or post the act? Let's say you donate something and then you realize that, oh, I want to do this on behalf of my father, for example, or mother.
Okay.
Can you do that post the action?
Okay, we were going to talk about this a little bit later, but we'll just bring it forth. In the beginning, we said that bin niyat, here this ba, it is for musahaba, which is like you have to do it together. In the Shafi'i madhab, the act, and actually in all the madhabs, the act has to come at, like, the intention needs to be made at the beginning. So if you give sadaqah, it has to come like right when you're about to give it, or when you're gathering this wealth to go and give it. This means later on you can't say, now I'm changing that to something else. But there are things where, for example, I owe you money. I don't have the intentions of giving you this money, but I have to give you the money. Here, when I give it, I can say, you know what? Even after, I can say, I did this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because I could have prevented myself from giving it to you. But that act itself doesn't require intentions when being done. But for any act that requires intentions, there is no changing. Except sometimes during the act itself, the intentions could change. So you could change the intentions, and it cannot be to go up. For example, if I am praying the 2 rak'ahs of Fajr, I have started it with the intentions that this is Fajr Salah itself. As I'm praying, after the first rak'ah, the idea comes to me, you know what, I can make it to the masjid. I have enough time to get ready, like I'm already ready, I have enough time to go to the masjid and catch the Salah. In that moment, you could switch your intentions from this being 2 rak'ahs of Fajr to 2 rak'ahs of Sunnah. You can do that. But you can never go upwards. So you can never change something that began as a Sunnah to turn into a Fard. But the other way, you would be able to do it. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, my question is, so let's say you miss Salah, let's say you miss Dhuhr and it's already like Asr time. Should the intention be to first pray Asr or to first pray Dhuhr, and why?
First to pray Dhuhr. And the reason why the scholars have made it a condition that the Salahs have to be done in order. Like you have to go from Dhuhr to Asr to Maghrib to Isha to Fajr. And if we wanted proof, we would look at the idea that we combine prayers at 2 possible times. We combine prayers at 2 possible times. At the earlier time of the first prayer, or at the second time of the second prayer. So for example, Dhuhr, we were traveling, or not even traveling, let's say there's heavy rainstorm. We decided we're going to combine here. When we combine, we say we're going to combine at the time of Dhuhr. At that time of Dhuhr, we are never going to say we're going to pray Asr first and then Dhuhr. There it makes sense, because Dhuhr is the Salah that is in, let me pray Dhuhr, and then afterwards I'm bringing Asr to combine it here. So this is okay. Now when you go to Asr, you don't make jam' of the prayer until the time actually enters. Until the time of Asr comes. So once Asr comes, that's when you say, I'm going to combine Asr and Dhuhr. When you do that, what is the prayer that you pray first? Not Asr, even though it is the time of Asr, you have to pray Dhuhr first. Then from Dhuhr you go to Asr, even though it's at the time of at the time of Asr prayer. Same thing for Maghrib and Isha. So because of this, like Salah needs to have the tartib of the way we would go about it. We would go Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and it has to go like this. If a person went to sleep tonight, woke up after Dhuhr, he's missed Fajr and he's missed Dhuhr, he would have to pray Fajr and then he would pray Dhuhr. Is that clear? Right.
Question on the combine. So you say you can combine Dhuhr and Asr. Like how does that work?
So the combining of the prayers for very selected reasons and very specific reasons. Let's say there's a huge rainstorm and it's unsafe for me to leave my house to go to the masjid. the masjid has the option of praying dhuhr and asr together at the time of dhuhr. So at that time, 1:30, I think it's 1:30 here, 1:30, you would get up and you would pray 4 rak'ahs of dhuhr. Then you would make iqamah and you would pray 4 rak'ahs of asr. When asr time comes, you wouldn't pray asr. You've already prayed it. But let's say you're traveling and it's not really convenient for you to pray at the time of dhuhr. You would take dhuhr, delay it until asr time, make adhan, make iqamah, pray dhuhr, then make iqamah, pray asr regular. So that's how it would work. And really, what we should restrict ourselves to is when we are traveling, we're going to combine prayers. Alhamdulillah, we don't get enough rain here to say this is a heavy rainstorm, so let us combine prayers. Even though I know the practice of some of the masajid here is if it even starts sprinkling, we are putting the salah together, which is like, we go from our cars to our house and then to the masjid. Like
when you're traveling, it's like when you're like literally traveling from one place to another, or once you get to like a destination.
So for like today we're in, we'll say San Francisco. Let's say we decided all go on a trip to New York. When we get to New York, if we pray Isha and we leave, we'll get there before Fajr. Fajr time we pray regular 2 rak'ahs. The Dhuhr time comes, we're like, hey, we're gonna pray Dhuhr and Asr together. So that kind of travel. And the edge of the city, 48 miles from there. So you pick, let's say this is Belmont. You live in Belmont, you go to the edge of Belmont. Count 48 miles, which would be like Santa Cruz is a combined area, 40 miles.
I don't know, I'm just guessing. Or
Monterey. Then you go there, you say, okay. But they have a masjid there, nice masjid, so I go there. Any other questions?
we can, maybe towards the end, because this will be a longer question.
Are we going to cover intentions for things other than fard and nawafil? Are we going to cover intentions in mu'amalat and in other things that where intention is actually, like for example nikah, for example, like those are the
So
meaty subjects.
yes, so we're going to talk about mu'amalat just after a little bit after we wrap this ibadat part of it out, then we'll go into the mu'amalat. Now, we said niyyah, you need intentions. And for ibadat, at the beginning of the actions, if you make wudu, at the beginning you have to make intention. Now, where do you make intentions? In the Shafi'i madhab, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but there is a talaffuz that happens with the intentions. Very rare now where someone would say the intentions. But for example, you would come and you would pray dhuhr. If you went to again, America, very rare to find this. You go to a Shafi'i masjid, the people would say, nawaitu salat kada wa kada fi makan kada wa kada. Like I intend to do this salah in this place and in this place. This is how many rak'ahs it is, and so on. This is the recommendation of the Shafi'i madhab to allow you, as a form of training yourself to what you are actually doing, to bring yourself to this act. But it's the place of intentions will always be the heart. If a person, for example, intends with his tongue to pray Asr, but it's Dhuhr time, and his heart is, I'm here actually for Dhuhr, but he mistakenly says with his tongue, I'm praying Asr, the tongue is not going to be looked at. What's going to be looked at is going to be what did he actually intend, which was Dhuhr, and Dhuhr will be accepted from him. In leaving off sin, intentions is not a requirement. For us leaving any type of sin, it is not a requirement for us to make intentions. If somebody offers you a drink, may Allah protect us from it, and you tell yourself, no, you don't have to say first, let me make the intentions that I am doing this for the sake of Allah, then say no. You just say no, and for that you are going to be rewarded. The other place that you don't need intention from the ibadat is when you are washing when you're washing someone that has passed away, because that washing of it is not it is one of purifying a person. It is not one of actual ritual ghusl that needs intentions. And the other thing also, it is not a condition for a person to perform Hajj al-Tamattu'. You don't need intentions for Hajj al-Tamattu'. For example, and the way that this, again, very rare in our times, if somebody, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, فَمَنْ تَمَتَّعَ بِالْعُمْرَةِ إِلَى الْحَجِّ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْهَدِيِ. Whoever performs Umrah and then performs Hajj, let him bring a slaughter. For us, because we are Americans, whenever we go perform Hajj, we always choose the package of At-Tamattu'. We'll do both. We'll do Umrah and then we'll do things. In the previous times, a person would make Umrah in the months of Hajj, which are the month of Shawwal, Dhul-Qa'dah and Dhul-Hijjah. If you made Umrah in Shawwal, you had no intentions of making Hajj, but you made it here in the first month of the month of Hajj. Then you decide when it is the month of Hajj, I'm going to go and perform Hajj. The intention doesn't need to be there for this to be considered a tamattu', and it is incumbent upon you to go and bring the animal to slaughter. So you would have to slaughter an animal because you performed it here, and now you've combined it with this. Again, this like rarely happens, right? Like for us, even if we performed it in Ashur al-Hurum or in the months of Hajj, when we go to Hajj, no American ever says, let me just do like Hajj by itself, or Hajj Qiran, or we are always people that do At-Tamattu'. The other place that you don't need intentions, and this touches a little bit on nikah, is when it comes to divorcing somebody. If you say words that aren't clear, and with it is the understanding of divorce, for example, I divorce you, you don't need to have intentions for this. This is a word that is actually going to carry the rulings that come after. And the Prophet ﷺ, we know that sometimes people would say things that necessitate divorce, and the intention would not be looked at. It would be, this is what has been said, which is opposite for someone that makes a word of divorce that's not clear, right? Or he makes a statement that is could have a possibility of a different meaning. In that case, the intention needs to be clarified. But in words that are very clear of I divorce you, the intention does not need to be there. We said the time of it needs to happen at the beginning of ibadah, at the beginning of worship. In Sawm, in fasting, because it's very hard to do it at the actual time of you begin fasting, you're allowed to do it anytime during the night. So anytime during the night, this is for the fara'id, for the sunnah. In the Shafi'i madhab, you have up until dhuhr time to make your intentions for the day. But there are other madhahib that allow for a person to even do it right before Maghrib time. So let's say you did not eat or drink the entire day, and then you realize there's 30 minutes until Maghrib. You know what? I want to fast today. So that day is going to be counted as a day of fasting for you. But in the Shafi'i madhab, it is cut off at the time of dhuhr. For zakat, you also don't have to give it as you give it. You don't have to make the intentions. The intentions could be made once you realize I am over the nisab. I'm going to give my zakat. But for every other type, and also slaughter, when you slaughter an animal, when you're making the preparations, when you decide Eid al-Adha is coming, I'm going to slaughter this year. You can make the intentions there. Every other act except these ones, they have to be done at the beginning of the action. Now, what destroys the intentions? There are three things that are going to destroy the intentions of a person. One, if you intend to pray Salah and you begin praying, and then you intend to stop prayer, Salah is broken. If you have the intentions of, I want to get out of it, Salah is now done, the intentions has been nullified. Or if you're should I break it or should I stay? Should I break it? Should I stay? Salah is broken. Or the ibadah that you're doing is broken. Or you make an oath of, if this person walks in, I'm going to break my Salah. If this person comes, I'm going to start fasting today. If I get invited to this place, I am going to start fasting. At that moment, not when you get invited, but at that moment that determination was made, the intentions, is cut. It is clear. Or the act is cut. There's no intentions. طيب? Now, that is the basic qawaid of al-umur bimaqasidiha. Now we move on to qawaid that come under this. This is a big one, al-kubra. Now we go to the one that is under it, which is what they call al-ibratu fil uqud bil amthali la bil ma'ani. That when it comes to transactions, or we'll say is when it comes to transactions, you look at the example instead of the words that are being used. Instead of looking at the words that are being used, you look at like what is actually being intended. For example, we have an ijara system in Islamic financing, to where I rent to you a property, or I'll rent to you like this horse, or this place, or this house. I'm going to rent it to you for 3 months. For 3 months, you are going to pay me this much. If I were to call this, if I were to say to this, instead of renting, I'm going to loan it to you, and this is what you have to pay. We don't look at, are you using the word loan, or are you using the word ijara, or are you using these other different words? We are going to look at what it is actually and determine the ruling of it on it. This is a qa'idah that even in the Shafi'i madhab there's a difference of opinion on. But what Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah sticks to is that we judge transactions, business dealings, with what they actually are instead of the words that are used. For example, we know that interest is haram, right? We know that interest is haram. And why is it haram? Because it is riba. Is every interest riba? Not every interest is riba. I'll give you an example. If you go to a car dealership, we'll say Honda, Toyota. Honda and Toyota, let's say they own this car. They'll tell you, we will finance this car to you with 0.9, 1.2, 1.5 APR. They will use the word, what will they use? Interest, right? When you're signing the documents, it'll have the word interest on there. If they own this, and you agree to it, have you engaged in riba? Yes or no? Huh?
No.
Says no. Anybody disagree?
I personally always thought that was considered interest.
Mm-hmm.
No, because some dealerships, they have their own financing.
Yeah, so this is the difference.
That's the key right here. Generally,
So Toyota, for example, like, they have their own.
Toyota, the big ones, they have their own kind of like
But
dealership.
there's other companies, they don't have their own financing, so they always do it through a bank.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the third party. If the third party comes in, that means it's triple, because they don't own the car.
Yes. If they don't own the car, and the bank is the one that owns the car and is selling it to you, then this is actually riba. Right? Because these people now are going to be making money from selling your contract to somebody else, or using your agreement to get a financial benefit. But if you own the car, and they say, they use the word interest, because of this qa'idah, we don't look at the words. We don't look at the words. What we look at is, what is it actually? So if you walk into the dealership, and he tells you, this is the final price that you are going to pay, we'll take a good number, we'll say 40,000 over 5 years. The interest rate on it, the car is worth 32. The interest, will say again 1%. The total comes out to 40,000. Again, ignore the math, but let's use these numbers. If you agree to this, you have not engaged in riba, even though the word here is interest. And if you went, for example, to a mortgage, it would also be interest. The difference between these are where do they fit into Islamic financial system? And because they are of two different kinds, then the words, we don't look at them. We look at what they are in actuality. Does that make sense? Yes.
I mean, this is this isn't a finance class, but I'm trying to just distinguish between Honda having their own finance team and owning the house and selling it versus a bank who, let's say, owns the house and is giving it to you for a mortgage.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
So when they give you this this mortgage, do they own the house, or do they have? What do they actually own this house? That's the first thing. The other thing, once you sign all of the documents, what happens to this mortgage that you had with the bank now? In the United States, they have to go and sell it. Right? They actually don't own it, so they'll go and they'll sell it to like Freddie Mac and Freddie Mae. And what they are doing with that is, hey, this person is paying us this much. Here is what we are selling you, and this is how much we're making off of him, while you are not getting any benefit. And then, for example, you miss a period, like you miss one payment, or you add more payments. What happens to the interest that is there? The interest will either stay longer or it will get shorter. Because of them not owning, and this happening to where, like riba, basic, like what it means is, anytime a loan is extended to where you have to pay more money, where you have to give more money for that extension of the loan, to where this person that is in debt gets zero benefit, that is riba.
But won't that happen for like the financing of the car? Like if you miss a payment, then they'll increase,
I don't think they increase payments.
or the interest or something.
No, so once you come to an agreement, you know this is the final price that you're paying, and this is how it's going to go. This is my car I'm selling you, but instead of saying, here, you don't have 32,000 to give me. If you give me over this period of time, I'm going to actually add this much value to it, and you agree to it then and there. It's not, you make these payments, it's not going to go up. And now you have this thing that he, as the owner, the bank does not own the house, nor is it going to own the contract that you have agreed to them with. They'll go and sell it. So there, like this is actually interest. On top of that, because we don't look at the words that is being used, we look at what are you actually doing? The difference is found right over there. The other time that this comes into practice is, for example, if I told you that I'm going to rent you my house, and after 10 years, we'll use the word lease to own. After 10 years, it's yours. If I said this, and then I decided, even after you own, you still have to go and give me the money, we won't look at what words you use to get to there. We'll just say that the actual agreement is that after 10 years, this is my house. I'm not going to give you money after these 10 years. And if you were to take this to a judge, the judge, if he follows this opinion of the Shafi'i madhab, he's going to say, no, it doesn't matter what words you used. What really matters is, what did you actually do? You entered into this agreement, and these were the conditions of the agreement. The words that are used have no bearing on it. This is what it is in the Sharia, and this is what needs to be fulfilled. Any questions? So
for the houses that goes foreclosure,
yes.
it becomes owned by the bank because the bank takes the house.
Yeah.
So these houses you can actually buy from the bank, and it's not going to be referring.
So if this is one of those situations where you shouldn't do it, but if you do it and you pay like for example, the houses that the city shuts down and they have them in auctions, to where there's a possibility that people are still living inside. But if you go and you pay the due taxes, then the house becomes yours. In the training they provide for imams, guidance is natural, they have this training they provide for housing and how to deal with mortgages. This is not something that a good Muslim should do. It's not something they should do. But nothing from the Sharia prevents them from actually going and doing it. So if you went and bought a foreclosed on house, which the price would be very cheap, then it would, it's in that gray area of there's some harm that a person is going to face, but that doesn't prevent you from actually going and doing it. Like, any other questions?
Just to clarify, I know this is not our interest,
Mm-hmm.
but as long as it's an owner finance like Toyota,
Yes.
Honda, whether it's a 1% or 5%,
Mm-hmm.
they own the car, it's an owner finance, then it's not an interest. As long as you agree.
If you know the final price and you agree to it, yes.
You agree to it,
And they own it, yes.
even if they say it's a.
Even if it says interest.
Or-
Even if they say this is the APR, right? Those are the words they're using. But this would not be that the interest of riba that we know as like the one we use.
Because they own the car.
Yes.
Right.
So that condition is they have to own the car. For example, I think maybe 2 months ago I was like, you know what? I want to get myself a Tesla. So I went to them and I said, hey, do you offer in-house financing? You actually, as the company, they're like, yes, we do, but the requirements to get it is a lot higher than it is if you went to one of our third parties. So if somebody went to them and said, you know what, I think I meet the requirements, and they give you in-house financing, then that would not be interest. But if that same company, Tesla itself, gives you a third party, that now becomes interest. Right? Because the loan is coming from someone that doesn't own the car, and you're paying it to someone that doesn't own the car.
I have a question that's a different topic, but I think it's something that we might have overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Do intentions, let's say you did something that's wrong,
Yes.
so you intended for it in the right way. Let's say, a simple example,
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to pray Dhuhr, but instead of praying 4, you prayed 3.
Yes.
But the intention was to pray Dhuhr.
Yes.
Do you get the ajr for it?
So if you know you pray 3, then Salah is not complete.
No, so let's say you don't even know that it's
Like-
supposed to be 4.
Can I answer based on your
Yes.
You said that intention is a shart, and shart, its absence gives absence, but its presence does not mean
Presence.
presence. So its
So
presence does not mean that you get the ajr, because you did not fulfill the.
I get it.
The ajr, there you go.
One second. Maybe
No,
I'm-
he's saying if you don't know. If you don't
Yeah,
know.
so I'm not saying that like you know it was not 3. What I'm saying is that let's say you actually believe that it's supposed to be 3.
Khalas.
An example of this could be like radical Muslims who are killing and they think that they're doing it for the right things.
Uh-huh.
It's the same concept. It's like
Yeah.
they've been told that this is the right way and that their intention is pure, that they want to do what's good.
Mm-hmm.
So do they get the reward for it? Like,
So this becomes difficult to answer, but like in general, if you do something believing
that's right.
like this is right, and there was an attempt to actually come to it, to like this is actually the way that I should be, then there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says my ummah is not going to be asked about 3 things: things that they were forced to do, things that they did out of ignorance, and things that they really looked into it and thought this is the correct way, like this is actually the way. So if for someone like, let's say someone became a Muslim, and for some reason, every time he looked up Dhuhr, he was told it was 3 rak'ahs. Right? And like this is all he did, like just got into him. And he's like convinced this is the way to do it. Then he does it. Then he won't be responsible for it. But the moment someone tells him, hey, this is not how it is, anytime after that it becomes different than it was before. Does that make it clear? Like, any other questions?
You know, there is some situation,
Uh-huh.
some of the car dealers, they sell you the car,
Yes.
and then when it comes to financing, you
Uh-huh.
do not get involved.
Yes.
Does this release the one who sold your car from the interest and it goes to the one who buy it?
Also, if you sold the car to a dealer, and they sold it and there was interest involved, is that the question?
The question, one more time,
Uh-huh.
somebody owns a car,
Yes.
and then he sell you the car
Yes.
for whatever the price.
Uh-huh.
And then you go and get financing for the car.
So who goes? The one that sold it or the one that bought it?
The buyer.
Okay.
The buyer
Uh-huh.
get financing for the car.
Yes.
And there is interest.
Yes.
You go to a bank, you go to whatever.
Uh-huh.
Does this release
The one that sold
the
it.
car from the river, the interest?
So if he sold it and he didn't know like this money came from riba, he would be free from it. But if I'm selling you, for example, I'm selling Umar a car, and I tell him, you know what, you need to give me $10,000. And he's like, I don't have $10,000 cash, but I can go to the bank and get $10,000 and bring it to you, but he has to pay interest on that $10,000. I wouldn't be responsible for those actions. But if I tell him, you know what,
You have to get it.
you have, like, go get that loan, and I know that you're getting interest on it, and I'm selling it to you according to this loan. If you can't pay that loan, the car is mine. That, I wouldn't be relieved that time. Right? If I make you actually go and get it, but if you just come to me, I don't know where you got your wealth from. You give me the 10,000, you end up paying riba, even though that 10,000 was used for the car. Again, here, we don't look at like the actual meaning of what happened. Oh, we look at what transpired between you and I. I gave you the car, you gave me 10,000. Where you got it from? No idea.
I think it's the same intention with like, student loans or like grants. Like if that money came, let's say like the school is giving you like a $10,000 grant,
Mm-hmm.
and that grant was based off some interest in that's how they got it.
Mm-hmm.
When they give it to you, it's lawful for you because you're not responsible on how they got it.
Yes. So you are not responsible for the riba of other people, unless you were the main factor in that riba happening. Is that clear? Us? Any other questions?
Good question.
Mhm.
So let's say you have a factory that makes like sticks.
Yes.
Just a very simple thing.
Uh-huh.
And those sticks you can make brooms out of them, or you
Mhm.
can make weapons out of them.
Yes.
And so
Somebody buys it, though, makes it into weapons.
yeah, so if you know
Mhm.
that so if you're operating this factory and knowing that your biggest buyer is going to make weapons,
Yes.
is like what's the delineation of where your where your responsibility is, and is this really intention, or is this I don't know, is this
So the first thing is going to be
possible?
not only like first thing is there something wrong with weapons? Right, that's the first thing we have to get to. In general, we would say no, because like during the time of the
Yeah,
Prophet,
okay, let's
let's make it America. That's what we're intending, right?
Let's make it grapes. You have a grape.
Yes.
You have a
Mhm.
like a vineyard.
Mhm.
It's even called a vineyard.
Yes. And then you go, you sell it to the biggest winemaker. You make it to the biggest wine guy. Well, sure, you want to be held responsible, right? Because without you actually giving him this, he's not going to make the wine. But let's say you sell it to that regular person that passes by your vineyard. I want your grapes. He goes and he turns this into alcohol, or he turns it into wine. You are not going to be held responsible.
Just because you don't know.
Yeah, you didn't know. But here, like, you know what's going to happen. When the wine guy comes, he owns a winery, and he says, give me on all of the things that you are going to produce today, or you're going to produce this year, give me all of it. You're like, okay, he owns the winery, he's asking for grapes, that's what's going to happen. While if you sold it, for example, to Safeway, they might actually go and sell it to people that turn it into wine. Or people might come to your farm and buy it and then go home and turn it into wine. But you don't know that, so you won't be held responsible. But if you know it, you're going to be held responsible.
Okay, so this maqasid actually includes
Mhm.
maqasid of
Yeah, like transactions, where they go also have, again, what happens to it. You're not just selling grapes now. What is actually going to happen to that grape? What is that grape going to be used for? Needs to be taken into consideration. Any other questions? Now, to finish on transactions.
I have a question about
Yeah.
the niyya. So, for example, like the example of Fajr. So that's a very good example because
Yes.
you have like two rak'ah and two rak'ah.
Mhm.
They're identical. It's just basically one is sunnah and one is farz. So you
Yes,
have to
yeah.
actually, before you go, you have to like have a niyyah.
Mhm.
Maghrib, for example, which
Yes.
is like 3 rak'ahs, right?
Mhm.
There's no other 3
That-
rak'ahs.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So when you start praying Maghrib,
Mhm.
I know intentions is very tricky because you basically, you know what you're doing.
Yes.
Well, let's just say like Maghrib, for example, like you make wudu and you go and you know you're praying Maghrib.
Uh-huh.
Do you still need to like make the niyyah, or is it just something that, because you know that this is Maghrib?
Okay.
It's just like a tricky, because I know
So-
niyyah is a very interesting thing.
So what we want is to have the absence of niyyah, right? That I'm going, like when I go to the masjid, the fact that we're here from Maghrib to Isha, our intention is that since I am at the masjid, eventually the salahs that come in, I have to pray them. That is one intention. What we want to do before the prayer is to actually get better out of this prayer. I want to be, now I'm going to pray Maghrib. Just, and it doesn't take long, right? This is like something quick that happens inside. And all you want is like, hey, heart focus. We are going to pray Maghrib Salah. That's the intention that we want to be making. And a person could pray 3 rak'ahs of sunnah. So what makes that sunnah from Maghrib different? Right? Sometimes in Taraweeh, do you guys play 3 rak'ahs here? For witr? 3 rak'ahs, or you do 2 and 1? 2 and 1. There are some places where you do 3, like Maghrib Salah. Right? And someone might accidentally do, so there are people that pray 4 rak'ahs. Like for example in the Hanafi madhab,
They very free in Hanafi.
it's, yeah, and also for the Dhuhr, when we pray Sunnah before, what do? We do 2-2. There are people that,
4 and 4.
no, 2-2 meaning like 2 rak'ahs and then 2 rak'ahs, 4 rak'ahs. There are people that just do like Dhuhr Salah, 4 rak'ahs of Sunnah. Then you become like, this is the same thing. What made it different is when you began, what did you intend to do? Like, so just in the beginning, we make the intentions of this is what we are doing, and let this be the act that we're fulfilling. When Isha time comes in, or an easy example, when the person gets up to make the adhan, his intention should be, I'm making adhan for Salatul Isha. If he just makes the adhan, has he made the adhan is a question. Has he made this call? What type of reward is he going to get? And so on. So for that, the person should be, I am making this intention. And also, something that you find that is distinct to the Shafi'i madhab is that, when we are praying in Jama'ah, the Imam and the people have to have 2 different intentions. The Imam needs to have the intentions of, I'm leading, while the Ma'mun need to have the intentions of, we are being led. Right? So it's not just I'm going to pray Isha, but I'm praying Isha behind the Imam. Again, only Shafi'i madhab. Any other questions? Now, to finish off on, we judge things on what they are instead of the words that are used. Any type of, let's say we have an understanding of the way that we use words. For example, for the word $100, we can say $100, or if as a community we decided that another thing also means $100. Another word also means $100. Do we have one of those?
$100.
So like you have $100, you have $100. Alright? Or where I come from, someone will say like a bill. A bill is $100. If me and you got into an agreement that for that water bottle, I'm going to give you a bill for it. This is a word that could actually, like a $1 bill is a bill. But the way that we use it is what? Is to mean 100. So we're not going to look at the linguistic meaning of the word and say this is what it is. But what do we, in this transaction, what do we use the word a bill for? Now I owe you $100. So if you took me to court and the qadi was deciding, and this is the madhab that he followed, he wouldn't say, like my excuse would be, I said a bill. $5 bill, $10 bill, $20 bill, all of these are bills. I could give him any of that. And he says, no, we use bill to mean 100. This is how we use it. I would be required to pay the 100. That is where we don't look again at the words, we look at what is actually intended. What do we actually mean when we are getting into these transactions and so on? And this is why when you come, for us to wrap it up, if somebody is getting married, do we have to do it in the Arabic language? The nikah, giving and saying qabil, does it have to be in Arabic? It doesn't have to be in Arabic. Why? Because it's not the words that we are looking at. What we are looking at is, what are you actually doing? A man and a woman, the wali, the witnesses, you've agreed on a mahar. If you do it in Farsi, if you do it in French, if you do it in Spanish, and you have agreed together, later on you can't say, I did not do a nikah, because the aqd has to be, this was not words of aqd that I used. Right? For example, if a father got the permission of the daughter, and he says, for example, she accepted, she says, I wed my daughter to you on this mahar this mahar of, let's say, a number, we'll just say a number, I don't want to say a number and give people ideas here. What I approve and don't approve, the lower, the much better. And again, we're in a room full of fathers, so this is, I don't think this is a struggle for you guys. So let's say the person just says, yes, I agree to this. Now these two people are married. Because it's not the words we're looking for, but it is what you're actually intending. Any questions up to here? With this, we have finished al-umur bimaqasidiha. Any questions on this thing of everything is judged by the intention that is made? Any questions there? All of our deeds.
I have one question that I
Yes.
We covered furud, nawafil, and there are like some things that are said to have greater rewards, and they are like the hadith is to encourage doing them, but they are not an act in their own. So, for example, staying from fajr to shuruq in sunrising. So, do these type of things need intention? So, let's say I'm staying in, like I prayed fajr, I stayed like reading Quran, and oh wow, it's for shuruq time. Did I get it, or did I need to actually say, oh, I'm doing i'tikaf until?
So because this is something that can be normal, right? It's normal for someone to come to the masjid and just sit there and take it as a time of break, right? People do that. Because that is there, you would actually have to make intention that this is i'tikaf that I'm doing, or this is the sitting I'm doing until shuruq, to get the reward for it. It can't be just, it's sun has risen, time to pray my 2 rak'ahs and I got it.
I was doing
Ibadat
all the time.
So let's look at it, instead of shuruq, let's look at it this way. In Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ every year used to sit in i'tikaf. Every year. If I come to the masjid in the last 10 days, I'm going to be fasting, I'm going to pray qiyamul layl, I'm going to do everything that is required to do i'tikaf. But my intentions is I'm just here for a sleepover. Right? Or I don't make intentions, but I actually go and do it. Can I say afterwards I did i'tikaf for 10 days? I cannot. Because this is something, like this is one of the ibadat that needs the niyyah at the beginning of it. So when I go, I am actually going to go and perform i'tikaf. Therefore, everything now that I do is that rewards are going to be multiplied. If, let's say this masjid had a sleepover. If I just came for the sleepover, and then you came and you were like, I'm going to do i'tikaf for 1 day. You are going to get reward for i'tikaf, even though me and you are going to do the same exact thing. We're going to come, maybe pray qiyamul layl, and then sleep over, wake up for fajr, and pray. Our rewards are going to be different, because you use your intentions for it. And I would even like to expand more on it. I would go to, for example, when we eat, we don't make intentions. We don't really say, this is or when we sleep. if I go to sleep tonight and I say I am making, the reason I'm going to sleep, my intention is to be able to wake up and pray tahajjud. That person is going to be rewarded for this niyyah they made. The one that just goes to sleep, this is just a customary thing that you do, that you have to do, khalas. There's no reward for you for this sleep that you are doing. Or somebody that eats and drinks with the intention that I am drinking this so that I have strength to be able to pray Isha. That person is going to be rewarded. So in all of the ibadat, except the ones that we mentioned, which was fasting, udhiyah, zakat, and what was the other one? No, that's udhiyah, adahi. Fasting, udhiyah, zakat, and we also said al-hajj, that is tamattu. For those, you don't have to make intentions at the beginning.
So is fasting sunnah or also for fasting?
Also for fasting. But with fard, you don't have the option of dhuhr time. It has to be done before fajr.
Okay, so that's what I mean. Okay, so
But it can be done like after maghrib. It can be done after Isha.
Okay, for the next.
So like we prayed Isha tomorrow. If this was Ramadan, tomorrow I'm going to fast.
That makes sense.
Right? But for the nawafil, you could pass until the date. If any action is outside of these, the intentions have to come at the beginning. But for these, the intentions are not required. Just what necessitates it being done is required after. Right? For zakat, let's say, like you kind of know the 11th month, let's say you know, hey, this is how much I have to pay. The intention can start from there in the gathering of the wealth. And then when you give it, like at that giving, you don't need, like the intention doesn't need to be there. With the slaughter, the same thing. And then for Hajj, that is tamattu', same thing. Any questions? Till we wrap up now.
When it comes to like, let's say you're intending to pray.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow, I thought it was 10:15.
That's okay, let's make adhan and iqamah back to back.
What was last week was 10:15, right?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it went back. Bismillah. Oh yeah, Bismillah. Go ahead. Even though I offered you afan.
Oh, do you want to?